I'm sorry, darling, mumbled Neil, shifting from foot to foot. Look, I've been on the road all the time. How should I know what you are doing and who you are meeting? Any man would have such thoughts. You've completely lost your conscience, Neil. Kate exploded in anger. You want to make up and start singing the same old tune that led me to file for divorce. Or get out of my place. I'm sick and tired of your whining and stupid accusations. You shouldn't have married me if you always doubted my decency. Leave and never come back. With a face burning with anger, Kate threw open the door and pushed her ex-husband onto the staircase. It all started many years ago when Neil, a long-haul trucker, often heard various stories and indecent jokes about cheating wives from his more experienced colleagues. Neil began to wonder what his young and beautiful wife Kate was doing in his absence, despite all his suspicions. Each time he came back, he found a clean house, delicious homemade food, freshly ironed clothes, and healthy, well-groomed children. At least the couple had 3 little sons, so Kate had plenty of care for them. Bathing, feeding, taking them out, walking with them, and doing activities with them after kindergarten. Neil came home one day to find his wife patiently teaching their middle son, Leonard, how to read syllables. Exhausted, she turned to Neil and asked, "Neil, can you try? I'm out of energy. If they were like me, there wouldn't be any problems." Neil sarcastically replied, "What are you trying to say?" "I've always studied with honors. I just don't know how to teach them." "I'm not a teacher." Kate was offended. Sting City, teen not talking about teaching, Neil looked annoyed. "Maybe they're so unintelligent because they're not my sons." "What did you say?" Kate's face turned pale, then deep red. "Reach podcast Fitzmill and Clay said you heard." Noel raised his voice. Kate watched his distorted face and bulging eyes in a daze. "Who do you spend your time with when I'm on the road? Couldn't you have picked someone smarter as a lover so that the kids could at least think better? You probably chose someone who looks like me, so I wouldn't doubt my paternity." "Who is he?" His wife approached him and said in a calm tone, "You chose the wrong topic to practice your blatant idiocy. Truly, you will become like those men you used to laugh at, like those you associate with. Congratulations. You've accumulated so much dirt from your friends that you'll have to live with it. You know I won't tolerate it. I'm going to visit my parents now, and you should think about your behavior and words. I swear I won't listen to your disgusting insults about things I've never done." Neil's confident voice instantly cooled. But as they say, you can't take back what you've said. No matter how much he apologized, no matter how much he followed Kate around, she remained persistent and began packing. Realizing that his wife wasn't going to forgive him, Neil returned to his usual insulting tone. "You are leaving, so I won't catch you with your lover, Kate, who was carrying a suitcase with the children's things into the hallway, flared up with anger, setting her suitcase down. She walked up to her husband and looked at him with a cold, disdainful gaze from head to toe. "Be happy, dear. We no longer exist for us," she replied, called her sons, and started walking down the stairs to the waiting taxi. It's buccal tuition. As soon as they were out of sight, Neil ran out to the balcony and began greedily watching. Cheats, would any men come to help Kate? However, she managed all by herself, and now he was alone in his apartment. At first, Neil was happy to finally relax from the constant noise and chaos in the house. He watched TV at full volume until 3 a.m, played video games, and enjoyed the peace and quiet. He was sure that Kate herself would crawl on her knees and beg for forgiveness and prove her innocence. But he had no idea that she had finally filed for divorce. Thriller. This conversation became the last straw that filled her cup of patience. Besides, she did not apply for child support so that in the future Neil would not hope for anything from their sons when they grew up. Time passed, and one day, Neil returned from a trip to discover that someone had robbed his apartment, taking all the electronics and hidden savings. The thieves were not found, and Neil realized that something had to change. Keynes, he decided to get married to someone who would be at home to watch over everything. He didn't have to look for a bride for long. True lies, a local woman a little older than Kate, who had never been married, had been eyeing him for a long time. She was very attractive, and soon after spending a few nights with her, Neil proposed to her. Neil thought Kate would be upset to hear that he got married, but she was not in the mood to torment herself with jealousy or suffering over her ex-husband. Bates, the woman actively pursued a new profession to give her sons a good education and help them enroll into university after school. The older son, Ron, who was lucky to be born during a period when his father did not have any suspicions of his wife's infidelity, loved him, and often called him, telling about what was happening in their lives. Therefore, Neil knew that Kate had not started a relationship with anyone. Instead of trying to find common ground with his ex-wife, Neil only spoke ill of her. Who needs her? He thought. Who would want to deal with such a cheater? Charlize gave birth to a son, but Neil, like in his first marriage, did not feel a special love for him. Soon he heard rumors that Kate had bought a house. Neil didn't like this news. He wondered where she got the money, thinking that some boyfriend must have given it to her. However, Andrew explained that her uncle, who had been living abroad for the last 20 years, left a large inheritance to his beloved niece. It was with this money that Kate was able to buy her own house and start her own business, which began to bring her a decent income after 2 years. Neil continued to live with Charlize without any pleasure, and with some nostalgia, remembered his first wife. Kate practically did not burden him with any household work, and he lived more for his own convenience, not helping her in any way. But Charlize demanded that he do the cleaning, help with dinners, and take care of their son so that she could rest and sleep. 18 years had passed. Returning home from another long trip, Neil did not notice a sign about road repairs and drove on. What happened next? He remembered very vaguely. A crash, a rumble, and a plunge into darkness. And through the fog, he heard the doctor telling Charlize, "We're taking him to surgery. He may need a blood donor because he has a rare blood type. If your son's blood type is AB and he has no health problems, donate blood just in case." It soon became clear that his son from Charlize had a blood group O, which couldn't have happened with his blood type AB. Neil was shocked, but he had no energy to think it through. He asked to inform his sons from his first marriage, and an hour later Ron arrived at the hospital, and he had just the right blood type. When the other sons also came to the donor station, they all had the needed blood group, which came as a surprise to Neil. Now he understood that his foolishness had destroyed his family and insulted a woman who had sacrificed her career and everything else to make his life easier. After being discharged from the hospital, Neil returned home but couldn't enter his apartment. Suddenly, a huge man who looked down at him with an unkind look opened the door. "What do you want?" he asked threateningly. "This is my apartment and I live here with my family," Neil protested. "Charlize, come here." "Your ex seems clueless," said the stranger. Neil felt that he could not breathe. At the sight of him, Charlize made a disgruntled grimace. "What are you doing here? You gifted this apartment to me and our son so that Kate's children wouldn't make any claims on it. So get out of here. Go wherever you want. By the way, I've already filed for divorce." "What about our family?" Neil stammered, feeling lost. "There is no our family," Charlize slyly smiled. "There's me, my Paul, and our son. You're not a part of our family. You can gather your things and go in any direction you want." Neil left with his belongings and sat on a bench near the entrance, quietly crying. He felt sorry for himself and wondered where he was supposed to go. As if listening to his thoughts, his son called. After hearing about his father's misfortune, he talked to his mother and persuaded her to accept her ex-husband, at least for a while. With a heavy heart, Kate agreed, but only for the time of Neil's recovery. She gave him a room in her large house, and almost everything was as it had been in those days, when there was no thought or talk about any divorce. The difference was that now Kate was sleeping in a separate bed and demanded distance, dictating her own rules. When Neil fully recovered, he decided to talk to his ex-wife heart-to-heart, secretly hoping that she would suggest that they live together again as husband and wife. However, Kate didn't think it was necessary to dig up the past, which began to anger Neil. "Why did you refuse to take the DNA test when I offered it to you?" he asked instantly, trying to unsettle Kate. "What? You were my first and only man, and the father of our boys could only be you. Who and what did I have to prove?" Kate replied, "Couldn't you understand that it was important to me? It would have been a simple act of support for your beloved husband." Neil continued his favorite topic. Kate calmly got up from her chair and walked into the room that used to belong to her ex-husband. Their sons, who were at that moment home, stared at their mother in surprise as she slowly packed Neil's few belongings into a large suitcase. When she finished, she returned to Neil. "What are you trying to achieve from me now? Do you want to accuse me of deciding to divorce you? If you want to know, it was the best decision of my life. You always knew that you were wrong, but you still accused me of infidelity. You've already recovered fully, so do me a favor and disappear from my life. I don't owe you anything." At that moment, Neil was a pitiful sight. His lower lip trembled, his face grew pale, and his eyes showed genuine fear. He looked towards his sons as if asking for their support, but they responded with cold glances. During all these years, Dad, you never came to see us or even asked how we were doing. Yes, in the hospital and afterward, we helped you because your life had been depending on it. But now you are on your own, and we are on our own just as we were before. Neil had nothing to say. He had to leave the house, and his sons lives, spending the remaining years alone and realizing his own guilt before the people who once loved him.